quality corporate training meets powerful AI. Docebo is the world's first generative AI learning platform. You can customize the learning experience and create content in seconds. Learn more at docebo.com.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has just announced a series of massive military exercises to test the Russian Federation's tactical nuclear arsenal. Moscow is boasting enormous operations, and the threat of the bomb is once again a hot topic, which is influencing the relations between states. Our modern world is experiencing one catastrophe after another. The 2020s opened with the COVID-19 pandemic. Then came the wars in Europe and the Middle East. These are the years of constant and multiple crises, a time of disasters and catastrophes. And threats are always out there, hidden in the invisible molecules of a virus or lurking in the warheads of nuclear missiles. In the face of these fears, the only choice is to seek refuge in separate, closed-off, impenetrable spaces. Fear creates consent. Fear is business. 3 years ago, after COVID emptied the cities of the world, in the United States, the North Star missile silo was put up for sale. One of the most secure shelters ever constructed. Placed in the middle of Kansas, the silo was built to withstand a nuclear blast, winds of up to 500 miles per hour, and any kind of man-made or natural catastrophe. An icon of the Cold War is now back in fashion in these years of perennial Armageddon. For just under $1 million, you could buy a house at hundreds of feet underground in the heart of a silo, protected by tons of steel and fitted with hydroponic greenhouses for growing food. Welcome to the dream of the West. Welcome to the bunker. I am Guido Brera, and you're listening to Black Box, The Hidden Side of Finance, a podcast by Cora Media, sponsored by Docebo. North Star is one of the most impenetrable structures ever made. Over 600 tons of steel were used to reinforce the 6-foot-thick concrete walls, all of this underground. The pamphlet points out that the 2 floors of the control center can be turned into 2 comfortable apartments, a meeting space, or a hydroponic greenhouse. You enter through 2 steel blast doors, each about 7,000 pounds in weight, and find yourself walking down a long tunnel right out of 2001, A Space Odyssey, leading to the silo itself. A 50-foot wide cylinder that drops about 180 feet deeper into the ground. Once renovated, the silo will be able to house small apartments or deposits. The Second World War ended in Europe with the fall of Berlin and the death of Adolf Hitler in his Führer bunker. It was a 30-room complex, protected by concrete walls 13 feet thick and about 26 feet underground. This is where the Reich took its last stand. But the nightmare was hardly over with the end of the conflict in April 1944. The Western world was rebuilt under the same influences that marked the breakup of the Third Reich: terror, protection, defense, and madness. The Cold War pierces the hearts of human beings. It chills us to the bone. Fear of missiles, fear of the bomb, fear of foreigners. And today, we can add to that the fear of viruses, of catastrophes, of climate change. Urban planning starts to focus on isolation and separation. One of the greatest modern philosophers, Paul Virilio, as a young urbanist wrote about this in his university dissertation Bunker Archéologie, published in 1975. Here he studies the feelings of alienation, isolation, and secrecy that follow us from the bunkers of the Nazis to today. These crypts seem to want to suggest resurrection, but in reality, they're death sentences. Symptoms of a life that's afraid of actually being lived. A life that just wants to disappear. American and European cities see an influx of desperate refugees seeking a better life away from hunger and war, but at the same time, the opposite is also happening. Westerners abandon the city centers, seeking out idealized suburban communities, similar in spirit to the bunkers. Alienation, distancing, isolation, withdrawal. Our fear brings out the same things that created it: destruction of the social state, of the safety net and public health care, elimination of meeting places and communities. All one can do is move from one gated community to another. Roads connect isolated non-places such as airports and malls, while public spaces are closed down. Meanwhile, technology is making each apartment self-sufficient, and logistics reach a point where each of us can just stay locked away in our homes. All this before the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the climate crisis. But they tried to warn us. For example, 1975 saw the release of the dark novel High Rise, where author James Ballard reveals the truth behind Western urban structures, mere islands of concrete where men give way to unthinkable rages of violence. Bunkers protect from the outside world as much as they enable the madness that festers within. The sun never rises on the malls, airports, or gated communities of this dawn of the dead. In his Notes from an Apocalypse, Mark O'Connell, also the author of To Be a Machine, uses the following words to describe a trip in South Dakota to see the lavish bunkers made for fearful billionaires. 575 decommissioned weapons storage facilities, gigantic concrete and steel structures designed to withstand explosions of up to half a megaton, targeting Americans who cared to protect themselves and their families from a variety of possible end-time events, from nuclear war, certainly, but also from electromagnetic pulse attacks and gigantic solar flares, and asteroid collisions and devastating outbreaks of viral contagion, and so on. These were the times of sanctions and the feared war with North Korea. Now fear has returned, and the dream of a bunker is back as well. Is the world frightening? Then it's better to hide away, to disappear. And so, on August 18, 2021, while the world was still in the thrall of COVID-19, North Star was put up for sale. The nightmare of living in a bunker is once again available, at a starting auction price of $900,000, about the price of a one-room apartment in New York or a house in the suburbs of Austin, Texas. You can buy an impregnable room as your own private space. The bunker is part of a complex of silos for the launch of intercontinental missiles built by the U.S. military towards the end of the 50s, during the Cold War. At that time, the Fuhrer bunker wasn't just a nightmare from a faraway past, but a dream to aspire to, and utopia to rebuild. It was by no accident that Kansas was chosen for its construction either. Right in the middle of America, it's the most isolated, defended, and protected part of the country. Impossible to reach for the long-distance missiles of the Soviet Navy. Equally distanced from the perdition of New York and Los Angeles, pure, pristine, unassailable. The military sites were decommissioned as part of the process of denuclearization. Some were destroyed, and others became research centers. One of these, however, was bought and refitted as a condominium, just like Ballard wrote. These are the words that appear on the North Star homepage. We need to be fit and ready for anything that might come our way. The phrase is indicative of our modern-day paranoia, and it doesn't come from the Bible, nor from a classic horror such as Night of the Living Dead, but instead it's taken from the Doomsday Diaries, an obscure series of post-apocalyptic fiction novels written by Aaron Powell, an ex-Marine who, on returning from Iraq a decade ago, started to publish trashy paperbacks like these. The same goes for the presentation video intended to seduce potential buyers. Following a montage of natural disasters and military catastrophes, a casually dressed older white man opens up the doors to a hellish abyss. The walls are bare save for a few ugly photographs. The metal is rusty, rubble is strewn about, light bulbs are hanging from naked wires on the ceiling, and water is seeping through. One gets a constant sense of claustrophobia, emptiness and alienation that seems to sublimate the desire of every modern Western man. The desire to disappear. Black Box is a Cora News podcast, produced by Cora Media and sponsored by Docebo. Written by Guido Brera with I Diavoli. Editorial supervision by Francesca Milano. Intro and sound design by Luca Micheli. Editing and post-production by Luca Micheli and Emanuele Moscatelli. Production organization by Alex Piverengo.